Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to do something different. I'm going to actually take a real home assignment I got in the past and I'm going to recreate it. This is going to be a home assignment for React Frontend developer, and I will tell you in short what the goal of the home assignment was. The goal was very open. The only thing I had to do is to create a table of 3 columns: ID, name, and last name, and to create a CRUD functionality, create, read, update, and delete, and make sure ID is going to be a unique field. So this is the requirement for the CRUD functionality. And another thing, I had to save the data somewhere. It wasn't specified where to save the data, and make sure the application is performance efficient, as less DB calls as possible. So what I decided to do is to actually use Firebase for real-time database and real-time changes. And this is the stack that I used for this kind of home assignment. So the tech stack was create React app with Redux template, styled components for styles, Firebase for real-time database, and React Hostify for user notifications. And basically this is a very simple assignment, but what I'm going to focus on this project is actually the project structure and the best practices of organizing the React project and actually using TypeScript for type safety and styled components and the benefits of them. And I'm a big fan of styled components, so I'm going to show you also how I work with them. And first of all, let's start by demonstrating the app. So I have here the complete project reference. So if I open the terminal and go to let's cd2 the complete project and run the app, npm start, I'm going to show you how the app looks and how it functions. Okay, so this is the project. Here we have the form with ID, name, and last name. I can create a new user, and this is the table. So right now, if I click on create new user, I'm going to have an error, all fields required, with React Hostify. Let me actually zoom in a little bit so you will see it a little bit better. So let's zoom to 150%, and again I click on create new user. I'm getting this toast error. Another thing that I had to do is to make sure the ID is unique. So if I try to use this ID and try to create another user, I will get an toast which says ID already exists. So if I change this number, for example, to 2, I will be able to create a new user. You can see the message, user created successfully, and it updated in the real-time database that connected to Firebase. And what else? Of course, I can edit and delete. When I click on delete, I have this alert that says, do you want to delete this user? I can click cancel, I can click OK, and then I will delete the user. And the last thing, when I click on edit, it opens me this kind of modal box, and if I click outside the modal is going to close. If I click inside the modal, it's not going to do anything, so we're going to implement this modal also. And when I type here test update, and let's say this one also, let's say test2 for example, save changes, and the changes are saved and the user gets the notification user updated successfully. So this is the project, and let me show you a little bit of the code in the finished project. So the structure is going to be as followed. I'm going to have components, constants, instances, services, and other files like app, global styles, index, and utils file. And in the components, I'm going to create forms folder, modals table, and here we have constants, which we're going to use for the Firebase config and table columns, and interfaces, which will include the interfaces for the app. And in the services, we have the Firebase service that is going to talk with the Firebase database. So these are the things that we're going to create. And that's it. So we can start creating the project from scratch. Of course, I'm going to copy paste some styles and some stuff like that that is not relevant to the actual functionality of the project. It's not a CSS course. So for now, that's it, and we can start creating the project right away. The first thing you need is a Firebase user. So first of all, log into this Firebase console, and if you're logged in for the first time, you will not have any projects here, and you're going to have to create a new project. So just click on add project, and this is very straightforward. Just choose web and choose the region that you're located in. I'm not going to create a new project, and I'm just going to use this table assignment that I already have here. So when you create a project, make sure that this is a web project, and after you create it, you go to Firestore database and you create the database. Here you can see already the database that I have. So I have the users right here, and actually this is a NoSQL database, so you can see that I have these documents kind of these are kind of JavaScript objects, and you have here two fields, last name and name, and this is actually the ID of the user. So the ID, and here are the fields of this particular ID object. After you create this user, what you need from here is you will get this Firebase config. This is actually how you connect to Firebase from your project. So we have to install Firebase, and then we're going to add this config file and connect to our Firebase project. So let's begin by creating the React app and doing these configurations. So let me actually go to, let's type here create React app TypeScript. Just want to have the command. So this is npx create React app -- template TypeScript. So I can copy this, and I'm in my home assignment folder, and here I'm going to create this React project. So just paste, and instead of my app, I'm going to use a dot because I want to have the project installed in this table assignment folder. So when I install this is going to be inside. So I did something wrong here. The directory contains files that could conflict. So maybe it's this file. Can actually remove it. Try again. Okay, so now I'm waiting for the app to be installed. In the meanwhile, let me actually see already what we need to install for the project. So we'll go inside the complete project package JSON, and let's see. So we need the types for styled components, we need Firebase, and we need the styled components itself, and React Toastify. So these are the packages that I'm going to install after the project is ready. So let's copy these types styled components and can close this. I see that it already finished. So let's go to package JSON. We will see that everything is installing properly. Type npm I, the type styled components, the styled components itself, components, Firebase. What else we need? React Toastify. So let's install these packages. And now I can use this config file. First of all, but let's create this folder structure that I have in my complete project. So I'm going to need all these folders, but before that let me actually clear the project. So usually I keep the favicon, so I will have this React favicon when I open the app. So from here I don't need any of these links, and can get rid of this comment. And now let's get rid of all these files, and inside src get rid of all the files except index.tsx and app.tsx. So let's see, inside index.tsx now I don't need any of these imports, and I don't need this, don't need strict mode, and I don't need this, and that's it. You can see that now I installed this React app, and it already has the React 18 installation, because npx actually takes the latest version. So you can see React 18. This means that this index is a little bit different. Okay, so let's go to app.tsx. Let's clear also this file. Going to create a functional component, and for now let's save it like this. Now let's run this project and hope everything works with npm start. Okay, so it seems good. Now we can create the project structure just like we have in the complete project, and let's see what we need. So let's create another terminal, cd to table assignment. First let's go to the src folder, so cd src, then we create all the folders, make their components and constants interfaces and services. So created the folders. Now let's create the global styles ts and utils ts. So this is all the files that we need in the src. So touch global styles ts and utils ts. Okay, now let's already create the folders for the components, and we can begin with the configuration of Firebase first. So cd to components and make their forms, modals and table. And okay, so for now let's close this, and inside constants going to create a new file, Firebase config.ts. So here we use this config that we get from Firebase, this one. Let me actually go to my complete project to constants, Firebase config. So basically you initialize the app, you call it inside a variable called app, and then you initialize the DB with get firestore, and you pass the app here. This is the Firebase config that you initialize the app with. So let's just copy this and paste it inside Firebase config. Okay, now let me actually copy the global styles already to this file. So as I said, I'm not going to waste time on creating styles. But I'm going to explain. So this is how you create global styles with styled components. So you import create global styles, create global style, and here you specify inside backticks, you specify the styles that you need. So I'm going to use asterisk to do padding 0, margin 0, border box, box size and border box for all the elements. And for HTML and body, we're going to use width 100, min height 100 VH, and font size sans serif. Then we export the global styles and we can use it inside our app. So let's see what else we need for the app. So we need the users. The users actually going to be fetched from the app. We won't have any pages. This is going to be one page app. And container with global styles, toast container. And okay, so let's start working on the app file. I'm going to import styled from styled components, and this is how you create the styled components. If you go to my finished project, you can see that I have a container that I create with which is going to be a main HTML element, and I just specify the styles again with backticks. So this is the way you create styled components with styled components, and this is going to be the header, which is going to be h2. So let's get this. Actually, when I think about it, header is not such a good name, but let's keep it like this. So let's copy paste the styles, and I have to wrap it with the container. Here I have to use the global styles, so let's see if it auto imports them. Global styles from global styles, and let's type here up again just to see the difference. If I go to my project, and src utils is empty. This is why TypeScript is complaining. Let's close this for now, and you can see now the applied styles. First of all, I don't have any margin and padding, and you can see the font weight is the font family is different. So the styles are applied, global styles are applied. Now we're going to apply the React Toastify. So we need to import two things. First of all, we have to import the toast container from React Toastify, and we have to import the styles from React Toastify, which comes from React Toastify dist react toastify.css. And to use the React Toastify in our app, we just specify here the toast container, and it's going to have a prop of where you want to put the toast. So in our project we used position of bottom right, so we're going to use the same here of position bottom right. And the last thing I want now for the app is to actually get a state with the users. So I'm going to use useState to have the users saved in the app, and then we're going to pass the users to the table and to the form and everything we want. So it's going to be a little bit of prop drilling, but for this kind of small app it's fine, and to use a state manager it's kind of overkill for now. So let's create a use state with a field that is called users, and set users is going to be a use state. And now I want to actually specify the type of these users. So let me put here for now empty array. It's going to be array, and I have to create the user type. So we go to interfaces, and first of all let me save this file. Let's go to interfaces and create a new file called I can call it user interfaces, I can call it just interfaces for this app, but let's stay consistent and call user interface.ts. Here we're going to define the interfaces that are related to the user. So to create interface, we just type interface, and I'm going to call it user. I don't like to use some weird syntax like interface user or user I or something like that. We're just going to keep it clean and call it user, and the user interface is going to have ID, which is going to be string, name, which is going to be also string, and last name, which is going to be also a string. Now I can export this interface and import it in the app. So let's import the user from interfaces user interface, and now I can specify the type of this users. This is going to be array of users like that. So user is the user type, and this is going to be an array of users. So now when I hover over this, you can see that this is a user array. Now let's save, and we're going to fetch the users from the database, from Firebase. Let me close this to have some more space. So we're going to use a use effect to fetch the users every time they uploads. So let's create use effect here, and it's going to fetch the users. For now we don't have this function, so let's type just fetch users, and let's create the function that actually fetches the users from Firebase. So everything related to talking to the database is going to be inside services. So we can create a file, let's call it Firebase service.ts, and here we're going to put the functionality for Firebase. Okay, first of all, let's import all the things that we need already for our project. So we have some errors here because let's see, Firebase config. Actually, I had a typo, but I can just leave it like this. So I'm going to import db from the constants Firebase config, and we're going to import the types. We don't have the update user and create user type for now, so let's delete them. And the last thing we're going to import is this toast from React Toastify. This is how we're going to display the toasts for the user when we need them. Okay, so another thing we need here is a reference to the user's database. So this is how you create a reference to the user's collection. So you have this variable, let's call it user's query, and this is going to be a query, and we specify the collection. So we have this db that we export from the Firebase config, and we specify the collection of users, and this is how we have a reference to this users collection. Alright, so let's create our first function, which is going to be fetch users. So we're going to export async function, and we call it fetch users. And fetch users is going to get an argument, which is going to be set users. Set users. This set users argument is going to come from here. So we need this set users because when we this is going to be real-time database. So when we fetch the users in this function, I want to set the users to this state. So basically a trick to get the types, as you can see right now, set users has any type, and if you hover over this set users, you can see that this is the type of it. So I can just copy this type. It's going to be a React dispatch, and let's put the type here. So we define this set users. This is basically React dispatch, and it's going to be a set state action, and it's going to set the state to this users array that we defined in the use state. And okay, so now let's create the function. We're going to structure it with try catch blocks. In case of error, we're going to console. Let's type console log the error. So I'm going to use this on snapshot that coming from Firebase Firestore. The syntax is very weird and I don't like it, so I actually never remember it. So we're going to use this on snapshot, and here we're going to use the reference. So we're going to use this users query reference, and then we have this snapshot that are coming back to us. So let's call it just let's call it snapshot. So here we already have the data. So we're going to set the users here inside this block. So let me actually paste from the complete project, and instead of snapshot, let me use actually this query snapshot right here. So we set the users with query snapshot docs.docs.map. This is going to give me all the docs, and we have the user, and we have to use user.data to actually get the data from the user. And this is very weird, and I don't like this Firebase syntax at all, but this is what it is, and it's very convenient and easy to get real-time updates. And actually the function is ready, so we can import and see if it actually works. And let's go back to the app, and here we can already use this fetch users function. Fetch users, and as you can see, because we use TypeScript, fetch users complains because it's expected one argument but got 0. An argument for set users was not provided, and you can see how powerful TypeScript is and how easy it is to prevent errors. So you can just take this set users and just provide it like this, and the error will go away. Now when I save, I probably already have the users in my state, so let me test it with console log users, and let's go to the app. Okay, so I hope you can see it because it's very small, but I already have the users in my state. See how easy it was to implement it. You can see that I have these users that I had before in the database. So instead of console logging these users, we have to actually use the state and display them inside the table. So this is what we're going to do next. Okay, so let's begin by displaying the state according to the users. So first of all, I want to see if I have users, I want to display the table, and if I don't have the users, I want to display the header that says there are no users in the database. So let's get rid first of this console log, and we can get rid of this app. And as you can see at the beginning, users are going to be empty array. So I can check if this array has any length, then I can show the table, and if not, I can show the header. So first let's check if users dot length, let's check if it's equals to 0. Then I'm going to display the header, which says no users in the database. And I can check now if this users.length has actually bigger than 0, so users dot length is bigger than 0, then I want to show the table. Actually, I don't have the table component yet, so table. Let's define the table real quick. So we can go inside components, table, and create here a new file, table dot component .tsx. Okay, so let's create a React component and let's change this to table. Here I can specify that this is going to be a react.fc, and I can already say that this component is going to get a prop with users and this users are going to be user array. So I can expect this table to get prop with users. So can already use these users, destructure it from the props like this. Now let's save this file and let's import this table. Now you can see that I still have the error because property users is missing in type but required in type users blah blah blah. Users is declared here. So let's pass the users as users. Now you can see that the error is gone and I'm passing the users from the state. Now let's open the app and see what we get. First we have this error. Let me actually fix this error. It's really annoying, so I want to get rid of it. Let me actually zoom. Okay, so you can see the table here, which means that we're rendering the table component, which means that this users.length is bigger than 0. If the users.length was equal to 0, you would see this header, no users in the database. So it actually works, but let me get rid of this utils error first. We have only one util function here, which is going to be click outside listener. I will explain later. It's going to be actually used for the edit form, for the edit modal, sorry. So let me get rid of this error and go to utils, just paste it here. For now I don't care about it, I will talk about it later. And let's go back to the project and refresh. You can see for small second I had this header too, and then I have the table with the users basically. So now let's start working on the table component. For the table component, let's first import styled from styled components. Let me paste here the finished styles. And first we're going to wrap everything with the container, and inside this we're going to have the styled table. So let's paste it right here. Okay, first let's work on the table header. So I'm going to use just the t-head tag right here, and here I want to use this tr, which is going to be the styled table row. So it's going to have the header is going to have a background color of this kind of teal color. So let's use it right here. So tr. And now I need something from the finished project. I need to map through the table header cells. As you can see, I have in my finished project, I have a constants for table columns. This is going to be my table headers, which is going to be ID, name, last name, edit, and delete. So let me copy this and create inside constants. Let me close this one. Inside constants, I'm going to create a file. Let's call it table columns.ts. Let's Let's paste it here. Now let's import this table columns. Import, is it default? No. Import table columns, and I'm going to map through them and use th to display them. So let's copy. Let's use here a map. Sorry, let's use table columns dot map. Can get rid of this thing, and then I have the th, and I'm going to display here th. Let's specify a key with th.key. Actually, I need opening and closing here, so let's close this th, and the content is going to be the th.title. Let's save and check if it renders properly. Table is not defined. Sorry, it's not relevant anymore. Okay, so I have the table header, and again you can see this table because I have users, but I still don't display them. So the next thing, I need to map through these users and display the table rows. Let's create first the table row component. So inside the table folder, I'm going to create another component, and I'm going to call it table row dot component .tsx, and inside here I'm going to create a functional component. Let's call it table row, and again I want to import styled from styled components. Let me paste here the styles for the table row. This is going to be react.fc, and I'm going to get a user, which is going to be user type. Here I can get the user again, and we're going to use this user inside this table row. Okay, for now, just to check if everything works fine, let's actually use the user here, user, and let's display. Oh wait, I didn't destructure it. So let's use the user here, and let's display his ID, for example, just for now, for the test. Let's get back to table component. Now we're going to create a t body, and inside here I'm going to map through the users that I get. So users dot map, and I'm getting the user every time, and I'm going to render table row. And of course I have error because I don't supply the user. So let's say user is going to be this user that I get from the map, and another thing, the key is going to be user.id. Now when I save, let's get back to the project, and I actually have the IDs, but they are in white color. So when I apply this actual styles for the table row, you will see the the text properly. So let's get back to table row component, and let's create, actually I have to wrap this inside a tr. So this is my wrapper here, and now I have to create a bunch of table data, TD cells, and display all the data for the user. So let's start with TD. Actually I have, I think, 5 of these. So let's create 5 TDs, and the first one is going to be user.id. So I will show the user ID. Then I have user.name. then I have user dot last name, and here I want to use the button. So this is edit button, and this is edit button container, sorry. So I'm going to wrap the one of the buttons. Okay, so this is what we're going to use to get actually the modal to open properly. So this is the edit button container with position relative, which I'm going to use later. So let's wrap it inside the edit button container, and this one is going to be the edit button. So you can see that I'm passing to this styled button the button type, and I'm going to pass the update type to get the styles for the update button. So let's use this button here and say this is a button with a button type of update, and let's say this is edit, and this last one is going to be just button with a button type of delete. So button, and let's say here delete. The button type is going to be delete. Now when I save, let's see how these rows actually look. And cool, now I have all the data for the users: ID, name, last name, edit and delete with the proper styling for each of them. One more thing I want to add now for this table row is the state that actually is responsible for opening and closing the edit modal. So for now, I just want to add the state here. Let's define it as is modal open, and set is modal open, which is going to be use state. By default it's going to be false. And as you can see, I'm inside table row, so each table row will have its own state with this is modal open state. And on edit button click, I'm going to specify here on click, which is going to actually set it's not auto completing for me. Set is modal open. I'm going to use the previous state and just change it to the opposite. So is modal open. Now if I console log this, you will see that every time I click on the edit button, the state is going to toggle. Now we are ready to start creating the form that's actually responsible for adding new users. So let's go to components, and let's go inside forms and create this create user form. So new file, let's call it create user. Let's say create user form component.tsx component. So this one is a little bit long. Create user form .component.tsx. Let's create again a functional component. Create user form, and let's import styled from styled components, and I'm going to paste the styles right here. Here we need actually 3 fields with ID, name and last name, and a submit button to submit the form to the Firebase database. So let's start with wrapping everything inside this form. Okay, so I want my form not to be too much bloated, so I'm going to use another component for handling the inputs. So the input component is going to actually hold the label and everything we need for the functionality of the input. So we're going to create this component in a moment, but let's for now just define this function and let's define the states that we need. So again, this is going to be React functional component, and this component also going to have the users that are coming from the app. You will see later why we need the users here. So let's define it as user array, and we can destructure this prop from here. And for now, let me create the states that I need. So we're going to have ID, first name and last name. So const, let's say ID, and set ID is going to be use state. By default, it's going to be empty string. Const name and set name is going to be the same, and the last field, last name. So const last name, let's say last name like this, and set last name going to be use state, and with empty string again. Now I want to use helper function to reset the state fields when we have a successful submission. So const reset fields is going to be a function. Oops, it's going to be a function that takes these states and set them to the default empty string. So let's say here set ID, set name, and set last name. Let's actually create the form input component, and we're going to use these states from the fodder component from the create user form, and we're going to pass them to the input. So let's create another component here, form input dot component dot tsx. Create a functional component, and let's call it form input. Okay, first again I want to import the styles, so import styled from styled components. Let me paste the styles, and this component actually going to have many props. So this is the first time I'm going to use interface to define the props. So let's say interface, and this is going to be input form input props, and I'm going to actually use this form input props. So let's say this is React FC, and it's going to get the form input props just like that. And now we can define all the props inside this interface. So this component will have two optional fields. This is how you actually create the optional fields with TypeScript. So let's say they will have label as optional. I don't want to pass it all the time, only when I want. So it's going to be string, and placeholder, which is going to be also optional. So this is also string. Then we have a value and type. So value and type also string. And the last prop is going to be the onChange, which is going to be, for now I just define it as function. Later I will show you how to get the current type for this onChange. And of course we can already destructure all of this, so label, and you can see placeholder, value, and type, and last thing onChange. Now let me actually use the styles. So the structure is going to be, everything is going to be inside form control, and I'm going to have the label right here at the top. So label, and it's going to use the label from the props, and then we have the input field. Input, it's not like this. The input is going to be just open and closing tag, and now we have all the, actually you can see that inside here input is just an input field, and of course everything that this input HTML field has is applied also to this styled input. So let's define here all the things. So the placeholder is going to be placeholder, and type is going to be the type, oops, and value is going to be value, and of course on change with the on change. Okay, so this is it for now for this form input component, and we're going to use this form field inside here. So let's import the form input, and as you can see the error which says that it's going to expect this props value, type, and onChange, which are a must. And of course we have also the optional props that I'm going to supply. So here I just say, let's start with the label. So the label for we're starting with the ID, so it's going to be ID. Placeholder, let's say choose your ID, and then we have a type. Let's say the type is going to be text. Actually the type can be also a number, but it's not actually necessary for this. The value is going to be this ID from the state. So let's use ID and onChange. Okay, so for the onChange, I have to pass the like to set the state according to this event. So the onChange is going to be set ID, and now I have to get this actual event. So if I go here, I see that onChange is just a function which has nothing and returns void, but let's type here event. Now this event is any type, so I can't actually use it properly to set the state. So let's get back to the input form input component, and let's try to define this onChange properly. You can see that I have this React change event handler HTML input element. So this is actually the type that I want from the event. So let me copy this. React, oops, not this, only this. Oh, come on. So let's add here. Okay, so instead of this function, I'm going to paste here the type, and I just can get rid of this and just leave the React change event handler. And when I save now, I can go back to the create user form. Now I can see that this event is going to be React change event, and I can use this event to get the event dot target dot value that are coming from the form input. So basically from here. Now when I have this, I can change this state according to this React change event. Let me actually do the same for name and last name. So just copy this 2 more times and let's change the values here. So the label is going to be name. Choose your name. Let's just type here name. And this is going to be type text. The value is going to be name from the state. And the on change is going to be set name. Now the last one is username. Not username, last name, sorry. So last name. Choose your last name. Type is text. Value is going to be last name from state. And the on change set last name. Now when I save, let's check the form. And of course I didn't import the form to the app component. So let's get back to the app TSX. And I'm going to display this form. It doesn't matter what is the state of the users. So let's display it right above here. So let's say create, how did I call it? Create user form. And it's going to take the users as a prop, users. Now when I save, I have this nice looking small form with all the labels, the placeholders, and when I try to change the fields, they are actually going to be changed on the state here. So inside this state. So everything is working perfect for now. The only thing missing is that I need to have this submit button. So let's start creating this. Okay, to create this submit button and actually we'll be able to submit the user, we're going to need a few things. First of all, let's put the button inside the form. So the button is going to be inside this form control. So let's wrap this inside the form control and let's put the button right here. Button. And the button is going to be called create user, for example. And I can specify here the type of the button, which is going to be submit. By default it's going to be submit, but just to make sure that this is clear, let me see for a second if I applied the correct styles, and it seems okay. Now I'm going to create a function which is going to be this is going to be const on form submit, and this function is going to run when I submit the form. So let's say on submit, and this on submit is going to be React form event handler. Let me copy this event like this, and let's say on form submit, and we take this event which is going to be the form event, and I pass it here as event, and here say event is going to be this React form event. Why I have an issue here? React form event. Let's see. Okay, now I can use this event to prevent the default behavior of the form. And here we're going to use a function to create the user, which is going to be function that we create inside the Firebase service. But first of all, I have to specify the type here for creating the user. So let's create this interface, export interface, say create user. So this interface is going to be the props that I pass to the Firebase function. So let's define here what I need. So first of all, I need the users, and you will see why. User array. Then I need the ID. It's going to be string. Basically, I need all the fields: ID, name and last name, string and last name, string. And I need a function, how did I call it, reset fields, which is going to reset the fields on successful submission, and it's going to be just a function that returns nothing, so I specify as a void. And now we're going to go to the Firebase service. I'm going to create the function that actually is supposed to create the user. So let's go to services, Firebase service, and here let's export async function, which is going to be create user. Export async function create user. Okay, so I think I'm going to have a name conflict, so let's call it create user with a small c, because we're going to need the create user type here. So the arguments, let's call them args, are going to be the create user type that I defined. And now you can see that actually I don't see it yet, but I can actually destructure all the arguments. Let me paste here some the destructuring of the create user type, and also some client-side validations that I'm going to apply to this create user function before I actually run it in the backend. So I can paste here all these arguments that I destructure, and I have a typo here, reset form fields. Let's see how did I call it on the type. So let's go to here, reset fields, reset form fields. Now when I save and reset form fields, okay, now it's good. So I destructure all these fields from the create user type, from the arguments, and here I have a regex check for only digits. So ID regex check is going to check if the ID contains only digits, and here I check if I don't have any of the required fields. I'm going to return a toast error. Here, this is how I use this toast that we import from React Toastify, and I specify here React toasts error, all fields required. Then I check if ID length is not equal to 9, because ID should be 9 digits, 9 digits, 9 letters long, or if the ID regex check is not going to be valid, then I return a toast error wrong ID format. So basically the ID length needs to be 9, and the regex test check on the ID field is it has to pass in order to pass this if statement. And this is why I need the supply the users from the state. Here I check if user exists. So if I find the user with the ID that I applied here, then if the user exists, I'm going to return a toast with info message. ID already exists, because one of the requirements of this home assignment was to make sure that each ID is going to be unique. So if the user exists, I'm not going to add a user with the same ID. After all these validations are passed, I'm going to open here a try-catch block. Here I'm going to send all the info to Firebase database and create the user. First of all, if I have error, let's console log the error, and inside the try block, here I'm going to use a wait because it's going to be async function, which is going to be setDoc. I'm going to take this setDoc. Here I'm going to use the reference doc, and then I have to specify the DB, and the path is going to be users, because I'm going to use the users collection. And here I can say ID, which is going to set the ID of the ID that I applied here from the function. And after this, I have to say what fields I want to create. So I can say name and last name. Name and last name. After this function is done, I want to send the toast of success message. So let's send here toast.success. Let's say user created successfully. And now I want to use this reset form fields function to reset the state. So just run it like that. Alright, so let's use this create user function that I just created. Create user, which is going to come from services. Now I have to supply all the props, all the arguments. So let's say open here curly braces, and let's supply all the fields that I need here. So here I need the ID, the last name, reset form fields, and users. Reset form fields. So I have to change this to reset form fields. And okay, now let's check this functionality. If it actually works, I can get rid of this comment. Let's go back to my browser and let's try, let me actually refresh first. Let's try to create a user. So first of all, let's click on create user. And you can see that I already have the error, all fields required, which is the validation that I supplied to the client side. Now let me actually try to create a user, let's say with this ID. Let's see if this ID check actually works. And this is going to be user1 and user1. Let's click on create. ID already exists. Let's try to actually create the user. So let's use here 3 instead of 2. And cool. The fields are reset and I get the success message. And of course the user actually created. And now let me check one more thing. Let's try to use some invalid ID format. Let's say user2 and user2 to have all the fields. And I get the wrong ID format. Everything works pretty good. Okay guys, we're able to display all the users in the table and we're able to create new users. Now the only thing left is to work on the delete and edit functionality. So the delete is going to be very straightforward and we can already start creating it inside the service, the Firebase service. So let's go back to the project. First of all, I want to show you some other thing to create this create user interface. Instead of duplicating all these fields that already exist inside the user interface, we can actually get rid of all of this. and we can use syntax like that: is export interface create user, and let's say extends. So basically we can create a syntax like this. So export interface create user extends user, and you can see that I don't have any errors because I'm extending this user interface. This means that this create user will have all these fields, and in addition it will have these two fields. So this is just to prevent some duplication. Now we can go to the Firebase service file, and we can start creating the delete user function right here. Export async function, then call it delete user. And for the delete user, I'm going to take only the ID as an argument, so I don't have to create interface for that. So let's say that I get an ID, and it will be type of string. And let's wrap it inside try catch, and of course console log the error. Okay, so first I want the user to confirm with the alert pop-up that displayed with the browser. So let me paste here. We're going to check if we have window.confirm, and we ask the user, do you want to delete this user? And if the user is not confirmed, then we return from this function. If the user click on OK, we're going to continue, and we're going to use the delete doc from Firebase Firestore. So again, I'm going to use doc, and I need the DB, and I need the array of the users, so the collection of the users, and I'm going to pass the ID that I'm getting as an argument from this function. And of course I have to say here await, and if we succeed in that, then I'm going to show the toast dot success, and we can say user deleted successfully. Now we can save this file, and we can actually try to get this function already. It's going to happen on click on the delete button, so we can go back inside the form input, the table row component, and I have this delete button. So let's add an on click here. And the delete user is not working for the auto import. Delete user. Okay, let's just import it manually. Import delete user from services, and of course I have to pass the ID. So the ID here is going to be user.id. User.id. So it will find the user by user.id, and it should delete it. Now we can already test it, so let me refresh. Let's try to delete this last user. I have the confirm alert. Let's click on OK, and the user is deleted. Let me just check if I click cancel, and the user is not getting deleted. Okay, so the delete was very straightforward. Now we're going to work on the edit. Okay, now for the edit. If you remember, this onClick is going to just set the modal open and close. So we're going to need to create the edit modal first. So we can go inside the modals folder and create a new file. Let's call it edit user modal dot component dot tsx. Let's create a functional component, edit user modal And let's paste the styles from the finished project. We need to import styled from styled components, and this is going to be very similar to the create user form. We're going to use a form here, and we're going to use the form input component that we used before, but it's going to be different one. So we're going to create a new file for this modal input. So let's already create this file. So inside modals, we're going to create modal input. Let's just say modal input dot component tsx, and let's create another functional component, not like this one, rface modal input, and again let's paste the styles and import styled from styled components. Now the idea here is going to be very similar, so I'm going to create an interface. So let me paste here the finished interface with the modal input props. Let's define it as React FC, and let's pass here the modal input props. Here we can destructure all the props, so let's say on change type value label placeholder. Now we're going to get this form control and wrap it with form control. Then we have the label. The label is going to be with label value, and we have input. Input like that. Now we're going to use all these props, so value is going to be value, and same for placeholder, and type, and of course on change. Now let's save. Now let's get back to the edit user modal, and here I'm going to have also an interface, and let's import this user type, interfaces. Okay, so here we have is modal visible and set is modal visible. That is going to come from the table row. As you can see, table row component has this state, and this use set is modal open is going to be this type, set state action with boolean. So if I go back here, this is the type that I provided here. Let's define it also as React FC and paste the type here, the props, edit modal props, and we can destructure them like this with the props. First, let me actually define the return here. So we're going to return based on the is modal visible prop. So if, let's check here, if is modal visible, I'm going to return this form. Otherwise, I'm going to return just empty div, so it won't be actually visible on the page. So let's see, inside this form I'm going to have some input fields. So we're going to need input field for name and for last name. First of all, let's create the states. So let's go here and set the states for this edit edit user modal. So first const name and set name is going to be use state. Now the default value is going to come from the Finder component, so we can use here user.name. This is going to be the default value for name, and we can copy paste the same for last name. Let's type it like this and set last name. It's going to be user.last name. Okay, so these are the states. Now let's import the modal input. So let's type here, how did I call it? Let me check. Modal input. Okay, so modal input. Let's try to import. Okay, now what fields do I need here? I need the value type on change. Actually, I need all the fields because I want to have also label and placeholder. So let's start with label. And on change is missing, so let's define the on change. And on change here is going to be set name. And I have event, and here event dot target dot value, just like that. Now let's copy and paste it one more time and change the fields for last name, text, here say last name, your last name, event, and set last name. Okay, now I'm going to use this button, paste it here, Control V, let's say save changes. And I think for now I will be already able to toggle this edit modal. No, I think I need to import it to the the table row component. So let's go here inside the edit button container. Let's import the edit user modal like this. Now it's missing is modal visible user and set is modal visible. So let's say this is going to be visible, this is going to be is modal visible, is modal open, I called it. This one set is modal visible, set is modal open, and the user is going to be the user. Okay, so now when I save, and let's see, cool. Now when I click on this edit, it's going to toggle the modal. Now we need to add the functionality that when I click on this edit and I click outside this modal, I want the modal to close. So only if I click inside the modal, it's going to stay open. And if I click again on this edit button, or if I click outside the modal box, I want this modal to close. So for this, I'm going to need the ref. So let me paste here the ref. So we're going to use the use ref from the React hooks. Use ref, let's import it. Now I'm going to import this type, mutable ref object. Let's import this one also from React. And I'm going to use the ref on this form element. So ref is going to be a modal ref. and here you can see the type of this ref, HTML form element or null. And now we have to add the event listener to be able to see if I click outside the modal. Remember the utils function that we applied before that. So we're going to use now this function. So let's define a use effect down here. Use effect, which will create the event listener. So let me paste it here. So first of all, I need to import this function from utils. So first of all, we add the event listener to the document of mouse down, and we take the event and we pass the event, the modal ref, and set is modal visible, which is going to be coming from the footer. So I'm passing the set is modal visible and I'm passing it to the click outside listener function. And when the component is dismounted, I'm going to remove this event listener. So now if I save, let me actually go to the utils file and show you what is the event, the modal ref, and is modal visible. So if we go here, the event is a mouse event. The ref is going to be this mutable object of null or HTML form element. Set is modal visible is going to be the set state. So this is the state that is going to set the modal to the is modal visible to false. And if we check here if event dot target instance of HTML element, and we check if no ref.current contains event.target. So basically we check if when we click the target is not a part of this form modal. So let me check now if this actually happens, and nice, when I click inside on any of these I need to work still on this save changes function, but if I click inside the modal anywhere, it's not going to be closed. If I click on if I just click outside then the modal is going to close. So it works fine. Now the only thing left is to work on this save changes function, and we're done with this project. Alright, so we are back to this edit modal component. So let's see. We have this form, and we're going to have here the on submit, and it's going to take the event here and on submit. Let's just call it again on submit. Okay, so let's define this function. So here the event is going to be React. Let me actually type it here. This is form event, and let's pass it down here. Now let's create const on submit. Is going to take this event, which is going to be this type, and now I can use event prevent default, and here we update the user. So now only thing left is to create this function inside the Firebase service. Okay, so before that I'm going to define the type for the update user. So let's go first inside user interfaces, and let's create this type. It's going to be also extend of the user type, so let's say export interface update user extends user. So it's going to have all these fields. And I want to have here also set is modal visible. So set is modal visible. Okay, so the type of it, if I go to table row component, I'm going to need this type of React dispatch. So let's copy this and use it here. Now let's go to the Firebase service. I can collapse this and let's create the last function, export async function. Update user is going to take the args. Let's define them. Args as update user, and again let's use try catch with console log of the error. And here I'm going to let's destructure the arguments first. Const is going to be equals args, and here I have ID and last name, set is modal visible. Okay, so here we're going to use the last function update doc. So let's type await update doc, and again I'm going to need the doc, and let's define the DB and the collection, and we're going to find it by the ID that we pass. And now I have to specify what fields I want to update. So it's going to be name and last name. And if we have a success, I'm going to show a toast with success. And let's say user updated successfully. And the last thing, I'm going to use this set is modal visible. So let's paste it here, and we're going to set it to false. So we're going to set the state to false, close all of this, and let's check if everything works properly with the update user. Now let me refresh. Let's try to edit this this field. So let's delete this, and let's say this is going to be user2, and the last name is going to be user2. Save changes, and actually nothing happens. So let me inspect, and let's see what is happening. So edit user2, save changes. I don't see anything. Also I don't see anything in the network. Oh wait, I think I forgot to actually use this function, this update user. Okay, so let's go back to table row component, and sorry, edit user modal component. And where is the function? On submit. Okay, so I need to use the function here. So let's say here update user. Now we need to pass all these arguments. So let's open object here, and I need to pass ID, last name, name, and set is modal visible. ID okay, so here I cannot pass it like this because I need I need to get the user.id. So the ID is going to be user.id, and I'm going to use last name and name from the state. So actually the ID is coming from the prop as user.id, and I want to pass the updated name and last name. So I'm going to, instead of use user.name, I'm going to pass the name and last name from the state. So I think this is the right way to pass these props. Now let's check again. Let me refresh the page and let's see if I try to edit one more time. Let's say user2 and user2, save changes, and now you can see that I have a success message and the user is updated. So now we finished with this project. Everything works properly. Let's add one more user for the last time to check everything. So user3 and user3, create user. ID already exists, so let's use different ID here, and everything works fine. And this is it for this React home assignment. There is a lot of useful info here. Also, we used the Firebase to get real-time updates on our UI. And of course we used TypeScript, which is very important to learn for today. So if you stayed all this way, and if you liked the video, please like the video. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, so please subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next video. Bye and thank you all.